I like this part.
Go. Let's go. Move down, guys. Let's move them down, guys. Straight.
Keep moving, let's go.
Sarge.
A friend of mine who's actually a rebel yesterday at the parade.
Sarge.
The fight happened
Have them move down.
he just came home.
Push them line right here. Stay right here. Give me a line right here, guys. Sarge, take charge of this people right here.
Mic check! Mic check! I just got out! Never in my life have I felt so much solidarity! I have the best friends ever! I love this revolution! Our spring is here!
Let them talk if they want to. Talk don't bother me.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo, playing with the controls as usual, and here is my guest, Andy Stepanian.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Andy. And you're an interesting person because, to me, I saw you speak, and I was fascinated by what you had to say and the advice you had to give. By the way, what we were just watching on the screen a minute ago was recorded on Sunday night.
100 Center Street.
Yes, at 100 Center Street. And those were actually people who had been arrested the night before. About almost 100 people were arrested when
73, I believe.
When the police crashed through and shut down what is supposed to be a public park that's open 24 hours a day. So it was quite unexpected. And I wasn't there on Saturday night, although I was there on Sunday. But it seemed that they went from 0 to nightsticks in record time. Didn't really give anybody any warning, just came right in swinging and arresting. And I hear yesterday the mayor said some things that were pretty much supportive of the police in that
Unfortunately so, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Andy, you're the founder of the Sparrow Project?
The co-founder of the Sparrow Project. It's a grassroots, nonprofit PR and publicity creative consultation agency that helps activists like Occupy Wall Street, like vegan chefs and other individuals get their word out to the public.
That's interesting. And you got to be an activist. Well, you know, you were telling a story. We were at an event a week or so ago about political prisoners in America. And we were discussing political prisoners and why I picked that clip. You know, because there were some political prisoners, if I ever saw them, American, USA political prisoners behind bars waiting to be processed through the justice system for protesting. Right? And it seems today that protesting in America is illegal. It's not even legal anymore. Before we go into that, you were protesting, and you had some experiences, some direct experiences, and I wanted you maybe to tell folks about what your experiences were.
In my early 20s, I was involved with a protest campaign to close down Huntington Life Sciences. Huntington Life Sciences is a contract research organization with institutions both in the UK and the United States and a small field office in Japan. Our goal was to convince this company to start doing the ethical thing and stop testing things like flooring adhesives and agrochemicals and pesticides on beagle puppies, primates, things like that. So we had a multi-tiered campaign. One involved undercover investigations to expose what was going on inside there. So interns and people through job fairs started working inside the laboratory with hidden cameras to get the footage that we needed to show the egregious behavior of these laboratories. And then the other part of it was to indict essentially the science behind animal testing. So it was engaging doctors and scientists to say what's happening in the efficacy of the studies is merely a stepping stone. It's not giving them concrete data that they need in order to bring these products to market. And what we ended up finding along the way was that this company wasn't doing any research and development, wasn't doing anything to help children with cancer or any of those type of typical arguments that you get into. Instead, they were being used as a rubber stamp to get products to market. This contract research organization, as they label themselves, was that the contract says we need our product to get to market, figure out a way of it passing through standards. It was a way of sidestepping the FDA. So we took them as the worst of the worst. We brought them to the public, and we were finding that individuals that weren't radical, that weren't environmentalists, that weren't animal rights activists per se, saw it and they said, this is terrible, this needs to stop. So we had this critical mass of public support, and we went after the investors. We went after the bankers that were involved with putting people's mutual fund money.
Went after, how would define that verb, went after?
Went after, generally it was a campaign of nonviolent, direct action, civil disobedience, most of which manifested itself as small demonstrations outside the homes of executives that were involved with these investments. Sometimes there'd be walkthroughs at banks or walkthroughs at investment firms. You know, we're talking small numbers again, 15, 20-something people. But because we were using the internet to organize virally, we were able to do a demonstration of 15 people in the UK at the same time that we were doing a demonstration of 15 people in San Francisco and in Ohio and in Long Island, New York. I was arrested and charged with a federal crime because I happened to be, and this is one of the things that tethers me to this federal crime, I happened to be organizer of a demonstration that happened at Deloitte & Touche auditing firm in Long Island, New York, in which a bunch of individuals, including myself, went inside, left leaflets and DVDs in the cubicles of the employees there to learn about what they're investing in and what they're financially tethered to. And we were asked to leave by security, and when asked to leave, I threw a pile of leaflets off of a balcony and it kind of rained down on the employees while they were there. It's a little bit, you know, dramatic and silly. At most, it's a disorderly conduct type charge. We get outside, we meet the police out front, and they give us a choice. We could either walk away and not face criminal trespass, or we could stay and potentially face trespass. And we decided we already got everything done that we wanted to do for the day, so we left.
Okay.
That was the end of it. No municipal, you know, precinct in Long Island decided that it was worth charging us with any crime. No property was damaged, nothing like that. No one felt threatened. Right? But 3 years later, the feds come kicking down my door.
3 years later.
Yeah. Why? Because what had happened during that demonstration ultimately caused Deloitte & Touche to make a decision to no longer be financially invested in Huntington Life Sciences the next day. They said it's not worth this hassle. Because they didn't have that much money to gain from being invested in them, they decided to drop them as an auditor. And when they dropped them as an auditor, they were temporarily delisted. The stock for Huntington Life Sciences was temporarily delisted from the stock exchange for a period of a couple of days. And in doing so, there was this whole revenue loss because people were speculating that the company was going to go under because they weren't listed. And so what they were trying to say is that our small action, which was a petty criminal action at best, was resulting in millions of dollars in lost intellectual damages because what we did was strategic, we hit them financially, and we got them delisted.
How could they expect a jury to convict you of that?
Well, all they had to say is that we intended to cause $10,000 worth of financial damages, and that we did so in more than one state. The conspiracy count, which is what I was charged with, I wasn't charged with a substantive crime. A substantive crime would be like bank robbery, while someone who might be the guy that buys the car for the bank robber and gives them the blueprints could be the conspiracy to commit bank robbery. Well, I was charged with conspiracy to violate the Animal Enterprise Protection Act. I wasn't charged with an actual violation of it. So they were saying that what I did was...
What was that act again?
The Animal Enterprise Protection Act. It was a designer statute that was around for only a short period of time that was used specifically against us.
It's no longer...
It's been changed. It's been changed to be called the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act. They've now have enforced, they've increased sentencing guidelines and harsher penalties for people that violate it, but it's different language than what was used against me. So the law that was used against me was only used and brought to trial once, and that was for me and my co-defendants. And we were charged with conspiring to violate it. And all the prosecutor had to do was say to the jury, do you think it was their intention to cause more than $10,000 worth of physical or financial disruption to this company? And there was no way of disputing that. Anytime you do a boycott, the boycott is to remove finances in order to create a bargaining chip with the company.
Well, how come a boycott would be legal and what you did was not legal?
Well, actually, this is the most interesting part, is that the way the language of the law was structured, even though it mentions only businesses that use animals, that same legalese could be used for other things. And what you're starting to see now is you're starting to see the language of designer statutes being applied through a group, through an agency called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, being applied on state levels and federal levels as they're trying to work in this legislation everywhere as a way to ebb protest movements, a way to target individuals that protest gravel, oil, forest development.
So if you commit a minor crime in the course of a protest, like happens at Occupy Wall Street all the time. You refuse to leave, or you're allegedly blocking a sidewalk, or they let you on a bridge and say you're blocking the bridge afterwards. If that was construed to cause damage to a company that's protected by a law like this or an institution, then you're a terrorist.
Specifically in my case, the language said this because it involved animal enterprises. Some of the new legislation that's coming up it involves some language that overlaps the Hobbs Act, and there were individuals that tried to stop the development on an Indian reservation in the Midwest. Those individuals, they tried to prosecute them unsuccessfully underneath the Hobbs Act, but then you started seeing activists that were targeting the gravel and development industry in Oregon being targeted the same way, and legislation being introduced. And this is particularly draconian. This didn't pass. It didn't make it through the initial stages, but there were legislators in Oregon that were trying to pass a statute that would say if your tweet on Twitter resulted in more than 2 people getting together in the commission of a crime, whether it be a protest or whatever it may be, you could be charged with a felony that could be punished with up to 5 years in prison. So, for example, if I say get to Zuccotti, and at Zuccotti there's 100+ people, and at that protest some commission of crime happens, even if it's petty. Let's say there's a sit-in and somebody has to be dragged away and there's resisting arrest. Well, all of a sudden that's, you know, a petty offense. But if you say that I somehow facilitated that situation,
conspiracy to commit a small offense is a much larger offense.
And so you're having this language of incitement, you're having this language of imminent threat being toyed with and made more ambiguous for the purposes of prosecuting select individuals that they're trying to target.
So they brought these draconian charges against you, Andy Stepanian, and what happened next?
Well, I served 3 years in federal prison. I went to trial, mistried once, they moved jurisdiction from Newark, New Jersey to Trenton. We started a trial in Trenton and we mistried, and then we went for a second trial.
So you had 2 trials.
We had
First
2.
one was mistrial.
We went to arguments twice, but in the pretrial motions they moved, so we had to start again. So we in the pretrial motions we started in Newark, and then everything reset again to move to Trenton because the prosecution wanted to move the venue. Some people argue that
shopping.
Well, some people think they wanted to move closer to the pharmaceutical cabinet of America, like the medicine chest of America, than being in Newark, which is a stone's throw away from New York City, knowing that we can flood the courtroom with protesters. We have all these supporters in Newark. It's more liberal in Newark. They wanted to get us further away from that.
So for this crime, they tried you 3 times.
Let's say twice.
Because then you decided to settle?
No, we never settled.
Never settled?
No.
How did they get a conviction?
They got a conviction the second time around. We sat through a pretty long trial. It was almost around the same length as the first one, even though the first one was moving at a much slower pace. The second one moved at a faster pace, but it still took well over a month to finish. The jury was left with this decision to make. You know, was it their intention to cause $10,000 in damages? The argument that we were making is we weren't trying to hide this. We weren't trying to say that this wasn't what we were doing. We were trying to say that, yes, there is some slander that's happening in the media. Yes, some of the claims that are being made against us are inflated. But at the heart, what we're doing and with our legal team's oversight is legal. And it needs to be respected. You can't bring this law against us because this law violates the Constitution. In the back room, what people were deciding was we needed to go to trial on this because if we didn't, there'd be nothing on record in the way of a landmark case to challenge this law. And if this law succeeds, where will it be moved to next?
What was your feeling when they came out and said guilty?
I was kind of blank. I was kind of blank when it happened. And it was a shame, too, because I remember the news reported our blank stares as being like, we don't care, we're unsympathetic. And I was like, I completely care. I just don't want to show emotion in front of the cops and make it seem like I'm heartbroken that this happened. I also don't want to seem angry in front of the judge because I know I got to be sentenced by the judge. And I also don't want to seem flippant. So I was just kind of.
And then what did they make any offer to you at all to?
No, well, before trial, they did make some cursory offers to my lawyers, not to me. They never spoke to me. And the offers were, the first was cooperation. That was not going to happen. The second was just debriefing it to everything that I did
Yeah.
in the campaign, I still didn't choose to do that because I thought that if I did that, I was giving them a piece of a puzzle that could then help them with their cases against my co-defendants.
Piece
So-
of the puzzle. Interesting. This is where I walked in when you were speaking at the political prisoners rally. You were talking about why should what happened to you relate, Andy Stepanian, why should what happened to you relate to the public? Why is this not just something that happened to a person who had an interest in something that millions of people feel about, but it's a specific type of thing that has a specific following? Why should people, thousands of people who are participating in Occupy Wall Street around the country, why should activists involve? Why should anybody care? Why should the viewers be concerned about what happened to you?
Well, I think it's just a canary in the coal mine kind of situation. I don't like being in that position. I don't really like talking about the past. I'm actually working on a lot of great stuff
we're
right
go to
now.
that in a minute. Yeah, let's go
so I'd rather not cry about what happened to me. I served my 3 years in prison. I got out. I continued my activism. I feel better about stuff now than I ever have. But with that said, though, it just kind of speaks to this point of overbreadth or overbroad legislation, and now this fusion between private interest and government, and the corporatization, if I'm saying that correctly, of our legal process. And that's what makes it scary for any activist, whether it be Occupy Wall Street or an anti-logging activist or an anti-war activist, is they keep trying to throw stuff at the wall and see what will stick. So they're inventing new legalese. And with groups like ALEC that are growing in finances every single day, they're getting injected with cash from the Koch brothers and other individuals like that. That what they do is they have these summits. And the summits are fusions between lawyers, legislating writers, some legislators themselves at these big conferences they have, usually at resorts, and then the corporate lobbyists themselves. So the corporate lobbyists will sit there and they'll say, hey, lawyer X, we have this problem over here, whether it be activists that are coming after us or a union or there's zoning laws that are not letting us drill someplace. We need you to somehow tinker with the law so we can get at this oil or this natural gas, or we need to prosecute Tim DeChristopher for disrupting one of our auctions of Bureau of Land Management, or we need to go after these anti-pharmaceutical activists or Occupy Wall Street. And so what they'll do is
saying it's illegal, like in the case of that person you just mentioned, to put a false bid. All of a sudden, that's a crime now.
Yeah, the truth was is that they didn't really know what to hit him with.
Right.
So what they did is they said, okay, well, disrupting an auction, like it was for monetary gain, but it wasn't.
North by Northwest, I keep thinking a great movie, but anyway, if you ever see that movie. But
so what they'll do is they'll create this fusion. So one part is lawyers, right, that actually write. They're the copywriters. And then another part is legislators. So it'd be a member of Congress or a member of state, whoever it may be. And then the other part is the corporate interest. So the corporate interest says, I'm going to inject cash into ALEC and say, I need the following things to happen.
An organization that think tanks new laws to go after people like you and us.
And say, okay, lawyer, we need you to create some sort of legalese that supports this corporation. And they take it one step further. They're not just the agency that's the Cupid between the lawyers and the lobbyists. They're also Cupid between the legislators and the lobbyists and the lawyers. And what they do is they hoist the legislation. Once they have their model legislation, they hoist it through a particular legislator, and what they do is they essentially buy out that legislator. So for example, you might have one guy that votes progressive 99% of the time, but 1% of the time they get him because they give him this massive donation and they call him the one favor. Hey, we haven't talked to you in a couple of years, I know, but we need you to walk in this bill for us.
Very interesting.
And maybe they sometimes say no, right? But they do this to everybody until they find someone that walks it in. Some people, like James Inhofe, for example, they love ALEC. They take everything ALEC sends them and says, I'm going to do whatever, and it's like they get private money on the side. And then you have other individuals like Rick Perry. I mean, Rick Perry was taking a lot of ALEC cash right in the beginning. He's kind of out of the race now, but what they were thinking was, him and the Koch brothers, was we're going to give $200 million right off the rip to whoever's going up against Obama. They're making fake websites right now, saying one's called Jobs for the 99, right? And this is something that ALEC is making and the Koch brothers are making, called Jobs for the 99, about the Keystone XL pipeline, saying it's going to, with this overly inflated number of jobs it's going to create. with none of the attention to what tar sands
Right.
is doing to Canada
For 3 years,
and
you
what's
know, 2-3
destroying
years
to
of
the environment,
construction.
the fact it's going through Native American lands, the fact that people are getting arrested in Montana. So you have this nexus between corporate interests and everyone else. The reason why I bring it up in reference to Occupy Wall
That's
Street
good.
is Occupy Wall Street is now becoming more targeted with their focus.
Yeah.
They're targeting institutions like Bank of America specifically for their whole aggregation of all these toxic funds, saying we need to break this bank up. It's becoming like a monopoly. We need to break it up, or we need to get rid of it entirely. So
Yeah.
you're having this, fight back campaign and F the banks that's being organized as a kind of like an offshoot or a spin-off of Occupy Wall Street. You have Occupy the SEC that's trying to invoke a new vocal rule that kind of slow down this process of swapping toxic assets and things like that to prevent another one of these economic crises from happening. And you have these legislators and corporate interests that want these things to stop.
Sure.
So they're in constant communication with ALEC saying, well, how do we get at these guys? How do we limit or decrease their flexibility in their campaigning? It's a way to tie their hands.
Andy Stepanian joining us, telling us about his work as an activist, how he's been targeted, and now he's taking his experiences and taking them to people in political movements and helping them deal with these problems when they probably will come. I hate to say, it seems like protesting is not legal anymore in America, which is unfortunate. So, Andy Stepanian, if people want to learn more about what you're doing, how should they contact you?
They can contact me through sparrowmedia.net. That's a website that I facilitate. Again, it's sparrowmedia.net.
Okay.
And my information's on there on the contact page.
What is Sparrow Media?
Sparrow Media, for all intents and purposes, is a PR agency for activists and for grassroots, artists and creatives that really want to make this world a better place. It's not all that I do. I have a day job, but it's kind of my pet project.
Right.
And I do it because this is a new chapter in my life. I can't be on the front lines anymore because of the amount of strikes that have been against me, multiple felony convictions.
Okay.
If I get arrested on one of those front lines, there's a good chance that I'm going to actually spend some time in prison. Well, what I could be doing now is I could be offering advice so some people don't have to go through what I went through, and maybe create a space where these corporations are less likely to do what they're doing.
What's your advice? What are the 1, 2, 3 points of main advice you would give to activists who are listening, young activists who don't know really what they're getting into a little bit? What would you say? What to be prepared for? What to look out for?
I would say security culture. I get a lot of flack for that, but people need to be self-censoring at times with what they put out in the public. We're seeing this with Twitter being subpoenaed, asking for records for certain individuals. It's a different world now than
NYPD right now is currently...
The New York City DA is subpoenaing Twitter for the accounts of individuals, up to 14 now, Twitter accounts that they've subpoenaed. But the reason why I say this is that this is a different world now than when I was doing my campaigning along with the Shack 7. Yes, we were using social media, but it was social media in its fledgling stages. We were relying on text mob kind of servers, and we were also relying on PGP, which was encrypted, and we were also relying on MySpace just to get the word out, like a calendar of events for our protests. But now, people have gotten used to putting up everything. This is where I'm going right now. This is what's happening right now. Here's a picture of this happening. Here's a video of a scuffle with police. Well, we're almost doing the harm ourselves because now the NYPD gets to kick back and start capturing people's live streams and say, oh, they're doing all the videography work for us, because now we got that angle that we couldn't get, and there's an individual involved with this scuffle with police, and now we can charge them with assault instead of just resisting arrest.
So because I love taking pictures, and I take a lot of pictures at these events, and I always worry sometimes. Here's a picture of the police jumping on somebody and beating them up. It's clear to me, but that picture can be construed a lot of different ways in a courtroom.
Yeah, and this is what makes it so difficult, and this is why I say it's a different world now than it was before. What makes it so difficult is that nobody wants to limit people's speech. No one wants to be fascistic on our end saying, hey, turn that camera off or do this or do that. There needs to be something internally that we have, that we know that there's a discretion, that we know it's time to turn the cameras away. You can't be imposing it on other people. And I think that we need to develop this culture of we need to keep ourselves safe and we need to keep each other safe.
Have there been cases yet in New York or that you know of where people's videos that were taken, their cell phone videos and the pictures they've taken have been used to make charges worse against somebody or arrest somebody? Has that happened yet in New York?
I can't speak intelligently to that. I'm not sure.
That's something
but
maybe I'll research and find out.
Yeah, but what I will say is that I do know that some of the recent subpoenas have to do with what happened on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah.
And they're trying to subpoena information related to the occupation of the Brooklyn Bridge as part of a larger conspiratorial investigation. Don't know what it's about, but if they're going to try and bring heavy-handed charges, maybe against the individuals that facilitated that, whether it be NYPD or if it be the activists themselves, that's something that we need to be paying attention to.
Right, very good. All right, we have a couple minutes. Some final words, because I think it's interesting from your perspective. You've had some very interesting information, and I'd like you to turn advisor and advise activists. More information you would give them as far as how they should deport themselves, how they should deal with this internal check on themselves. Tell us more about that.
Instead of constantly talking about the boogeyman out there and what we need to be secure about, security culture is important, but also solidarity is very important. And being supportive of everyone, creating a safe space, and checking your own personal politics at the door, whether it be things like homophobia, racism, sexism, misogyny, things like that. Let's try to keep this out of the movement and make it as inclusive as possible.
These are all ways that
we can make our movement stronger.
Stronger, and the authorities can get in on it as well.
Definitely,
right?
Definitely. I mean, once they see a rift or something cleave people, they want to exploit it. So if they find this one set of individuals working in one working group has a tendency to be kind of misogynistic, they're bound to send someone in the ranks and kind of stoke those flames and whisper in other people's ears, look what these guys are doing over here. And what it does is it breaks down this communication. You start seeing this rift.
Right.
And what we need to be doing is we need to be kind of coagulating everyone together, and we need to bring everyone together around this safe space. And in doing so, we can't be, going through witch hunts trying to find the individuals that have these bad behaviors. If we're really going to unite under the banner of the 99%, that means we're uniting with all these people that have kind of messed up ways of thinking, myself included, that we all need to think about, you know? And so we need to kind of, just bring everyone together, show each other mutual aid, solidarity, respect, and kind of kill some of this infighting.
Right.
Infighting actually scares me more than the police.
If we get our shit together, then people will do a better job. I mean,
definitely,
in the future,
definitely.
It politically keeps the thing together.
The other thing there are
last
other
10 seconds. So.
Oh yeah, just feel free to get in touch. Sparrowmedia.net. Reach out to me. I'd be happy to help other individuals.
Thanks, Andy Stepanian.
And you can follow me on Twitter @SparrowMedia.
Thanks.